Hey BookTube, this is Kelly. Thank you so much for watching my channel, Books I'm Not Reading. I am here today to do my review for my March of the Mammoths book that I read, which is Charles Dickens' Our Mutual Friend. And you can see from my sticky notes that I had a very great discussion of this book with Joe Smith. Joe, if you're watching this video, please feel free to leave your comments, your thoughts about the book in the comment section, and I'll pin it to the top so that other people can see what you thought of it. This was Dickens' last full novel. It was published in 1865, and I will say, if you have the Penguin edition of this book, I read the introduction after I finished the book, and the introduction completely gives, in my opinion, the story away. And as well, there are spoilers in the footnotes. So there were a few things that I was like, oh man, so that's kind of a bummer, but that's on Penguin Classics, that's not on Dickens. I really don't want to tell you very much about this story because I feel like even to share what happens in the first chapter of the book is to somehow give something special away. I will say that the book centers around, and I mean there's so many characters in Dickens, but it somehow centers around two women, one who lives, if you could have a middle-class life in Victorian England, she's lower middle class maybe, but she was supposed to marry someone who was incredibly rich, and that did not turn out. And then the other character is someone who the other female protagonist, if you will, she is somebody who sees no future for herself, and is desperately trying to help her younger brother. I'm not sure that he's her biological brother, but she wants to help him have a better life and get him out. And those two stories do, of course, because it's Dickens and he's a master at making things weave together. So those two stories do touch up on each other, but one introduces us to this whole world of upper class society, very much the pretentiousness of wealth, and the other, of course, Dickens gives us the underside of the underbelly of Victorian England with all kinds of tricks and just villains after villains. It's great. There's some really great villains in this book, I will say that. And there's also just some really wonderful, I mean, the two main female characters are excellent. And there's another character, her name is Jenny Wren, and she's probably one of my favorite Dickens characters. So I really, really enjoy this. I think I gave it 4 stars, and I'm gonna go into why I gave it 4 stars here. But before that, I want to talk to you about another video about Our Mutual Friend, and I will link to this down below. This was a review of Our Mutual Friend done by Katie at Books and Things in 2016, because this is Katie's favorite book. Not just her favorite Dickens book, but her favorite book. Her review of this book is 19 minutes long, and she is so emotional about the book that there were times where I thought that she was on the verge of tears. And it was fascinating to listen to her talk about it because this was her introduction to Dickens, which is just like mind-blowing to me. It's also her mother's favorite book, and I think her mother, encouraged her to read it. I can't even imagine. I don't know. My 14-year-old self, I don't know that I could have handled Our Mutual Friend. So yeah, I mean, it's just, when I think about what I was reading when I was 14, when I think about what my nieces who are 13 are reading right now, like, it's really not, it's not an 800-page novel, by Charles Dickens. So yeah, anyway, so it was fascinating, and my review is in some ways a response to Katie's review because she feels like, and I can see why, like if this is the first Dickens you read and you fell in love with Dickens because of this, like yes, like you have an attachment to it that I, coming to it much later in life, have a different sort of reaction to it. She feels like Our Mutual Friend is maybe a response in some ways to what she considers to be problematic in other Dickens novels. And one of those great examples is the character in Our Mutual Friend of Raya, who is a Jew. And I learned from the footnotes that Dickens, before he wrote this, encountered a woman who must have been Jewish, and she really took Dickens to task for his portrayal of Fagin in Oliver Twist. And I think Dickens was a little surprised. So there are definitely characters in Our Mutual Friend who treat the Jewish character of Raya horribly. And I'm not saying that the Raya is a perfect character, but he's a good person. He's trying to do the right things under extremely difficult circumstances. And I believe that the woman who had initially taken Dickens to task on his portrayal of especially Fagin sent him a card thanking him after this book was published, because she felt like he had done a much better job of getting it right, I guess, if you will. So that was, it's interesting. I guess I disagree with the idea of, that Our Mutual Friend is the response to everything Dickens has written before, just because it's his last completed novel. I'm not sure that I agree with that. But, so let me tell you a little bit about my own experience with Dickens. I think I had read A Christmas Carol, and then I had a terrible experience reading Dickens in a class in college, and I thought I didn't like Dickens, and then I read Bleak House many years after reading Great Expectations, which I really want to read again, because I think I feel so differently about Dickens now than I did then. So Bleak House is about 990 pages, and there are so many storylines and so many threads, and like a drawstring purse at the end of this book, Dickens ties them all up. That there's resolution to everything, and I'm not saying that all books have to have that, but to do it in a book of this size, I think is something special. I think is something rather phenomenal. And then last year for March of the Mammoths, Joe and I read David Copperfield, which is again it's longer than Our Mutual Friend, and again it's just incredible to think that someone could write a book this long, and just it's airtight, like everything, where people are going, and that all of the storylines are resolved, and I find that amazing. Like, I really don't know how Dickens did that. I just don't. But Our Mutual Friend has a lot of unresolved storylines. It also has some things towards the end that and I think Joe agrees with me, felt really contrived, really hard to believe, which was not the case with David Copperfield and Bleak House, at least for me. Maybe at this point in his career, maybe Dickens was like, hey, you know what, like, it's okay, like, I don't have to tell you what's gonna happen to every character, because there are so many characters in Dickens, especially these huge mammoth books, and so maybe Dickens didn't care. I don't know. This is not to say that I didn't like Our Mutual Friend, but for the most part, like, going into it, I really thought it was going to be a 5-star book for me, and it ended up being a 4-star book. Now, again, I sort of rate Dickens in a separate category from most of the novels that I read. Dickens, Shakespeare, and Austen are kind of all in their own sort of separate stratosphere. They're not like other books that I read. And so, I mean, I'm really saying this is a 4-star book for Dickens, but it's not, it's still better than many of the 4-star books on my shelves. So I enjoyed it. It's very funny. There's some really, really funny scenes in this, as well as some, you know, as well as I mean, Dickens can do all of it, right? He can do romance, he can do humor, he can do violence, and it's all powerful, and yeah, amazing. If you want to read this book and you don't mind having there's very few spoilers in Katie's video. She will definitely describe the novel much more than I have in this review. But I feel like this is almost a response to her review. But I do think Our Mutual Friend is a book that should get more attention than it deserves and should get more discussion. But it also, yeah, I just don't quite have the attachment to it that I do to some of his other works. So, all right, book 2, but thank you so much for watching this video. If you've read Our Mutual Friend, I'd love to hear your thoughts about the book in the comments section, or if it's something that you want to read. Maybe you don't like Dickens, which I'm always curious as to why people don't like Dickens. And if you're a big Dickens fan, what is your favorite Dickens book that you've read so far? So, book 2, remember to be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.